afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Under the leadership of President Donald J. Trump,
the rogue Iranian terrorist regime,
the rogue Iranian terrorist regime is being
47 years of tolerating and enabling
47
the world's
leading
state sponsor
and
of terrorism,
the world's leading state sponsor of
Iran's
terrorism.
murderous terrorist leaders are paying for their crimes against America,
and they are crimes against America.
Since 1979,
the terrorist Iranian regime has actively
facilitated the killings of Americans.
Facilitated the killings of
America.
And
they
fund
chant
other
death
radical
to
terrorists
America,
who attack
and fund
our country
other radical
and are
terrorists
seeking
who
to
attack
destroy
our country,
Western
and are
civilization
seeking to destroy
itself.
Western
These
civilization
terrorists seized our
itself.
embassy and took 66
These terrorists
Americans
seized our
hostage
embassy
and took
Tehran.
66
They
Americans
slaughtered
hostage in Tehran.
241 U.S.
They
service
slaughtered
members with a truck
241
bombing
U.S.
in
service members with
They
a truck
killed
bombing
and maimed
in
hundreds
Beirut.
of American
They
service
killed and
members in
maimed
Iraq.
hundreds of
And
American
this is just
service
a small
members in
fraction
Iraq
of their
and this is just a small
record.
fraction.
Prior
of their
leaders have been
blood-soaked
too
record.
weak and ineffective
Prior leaders
to address
have been
this
too
threat.
weak and ineffective
Some,
to
like
address
Barack
this
Hussein
threat.
Obama,
Some,
even sent
like
pallets
Barack
of
Hussein
cash
Obama,
that ultimately
even sent
financed
pallets of
this
cash
terrorist crusade
that ultimately
against
financed
the United
this
States
terrorist
and our
crusade
people,
against the United
while
States
signing
and
stupid
our
and
people.
naive deals
While
that put
signing
Iran
stupid
on the
and
path
naive
of
deals
developing
that put
nuclear
Iran
bombs.
on the path
After
of
years
developing
of
nuclear
endless
bombs.
appeasement and empty
After
statements
years
from
of endless
politicians
appeasement
on both
and empty
sides of the
statements from
political aisle
politicians
in
on
this
both
town,
sides of the
President
political
Trump
aisle
is
in this
finally
town,
the man of
President
action.
Trump is
President
finally
Trump
the
is
man
holding
of
these
action.
monsters accountable
President Trump
and
is
permanently
holding these
extinguishing
monsters accountable
their
and
nuclear
permanently
ambitions.
extinguishing
Future
their
generations
nuclear
of
ambitions.
Americans will look to
Future
this
generations of
as the
Americans
moment
will look to
where the
this moment
specter of a
as the
nuclear
moment
arm
where the
Iran
specter of a
armed
nuclear
Iran
arm
ended.
Iran
At the
armed
beginning of
Iran
Operation
ended.
Epic Fury,
At
launched
the beginning
last
of
weekend,
Operation
President
Epic
Trump
Fury
laid out
launched last
clear
weekend.
objectives.
President
to the
Trump
American
laid
people
out clear
on what the U.S.
objectives to the
military
American
seeks to
people
accomplish
on what
through
the
these
U.S.
major
military
combat
seeks to
operations.
accomplish through these
Number
major
one,
combat
destroy
operations.
the regime's deadly
Number
ballistic
one,
missiles,
destroy the regime's deadly ballistic missiles
to the
and
ground.
completely raise their
Number
missile
two,
industry to
annihilate
the Iranian
Number
regime's
two,
navy.
annihilate
So far,
the Iranian
we have
regime's
destroyed
navy.
more than 20
And so far,
Iranian
we have
ships,
destroyed more
including
than
their
20
top submarine
Iranian
last
ships,
night,
using their top
submarine
last night
since
using
World
a
War II.
torpedo for the
There is
first
not a
time
single
since World War
Iranian
II.
ship underway.
There is not a
in the
single
Arabian
Iranian
Gulf,
ship underway
Strait of Hormuz,
in the
or the
Arabian Gulf,
Strait of Hormuz,
Number
or
three,
the Gulf of
Operation
Oman.
Epic Fury
Number
will
three,
ensure the regime's
Operation
terrorist
Epic
proxies
Fury
in the
will
region
ensure
can
the
no longer
regime's terrorist
destabilize
proxies
the
in the
region,
can no
or the
longer
free world,
destabilize the
and
region,
attack our
or
armed
the free
forces.
world,
And
thus
thus
far,
attack our
Iran's
armed
proxies
forces.
are hardly
And thus
putting
far,
up a fight.
Iran's proxies are
Number
hardly
four,
putting up
this
a fight.
mission will guarantee
Number
that Iran
four,
can never
this mission will
obtain
guarantee that
a
Iran
nuclear
can
weapon.
never obtain
It's safe to
a
say that
nuclear
thus far,
weapon.
Operation
It's
Epic
safe to
Fury
say
has
that
been a
thus far,
resounding
Operation
success.
Epic Fury has
American
been a
forces
resounding
have struck
success.
more than 2,000
American
targets,
forces have
destroying
struck more than
hundreds and
2,000
hundreds of
targets,
ballistic missiles,
destroying hundreds
launchers
and
and
hundreds
drones.
of ballistic missiles.
As the Department of War
launchers
said
and
this
drones.
morning, we expect
As
to
the
have
Department of
complete
War said
and
this
total
morning, we expect
dominance
to have
over
complete
Iranian
and
airspace
total
in the coming
dominance
hours,
over Iranian
clearing the
airspace
skies
in
for
the
our
coming
brave
hours.
warriors to
Clearing
continue
the skies
achieving
for our brave
these
warriors to
noble and
continue
long-sought-after
achieving
objectives.
these noble and
There's been a lot of
long-sought-after
misreporting and
objectives.
intellectual
There's
dishonesty
been a lot of
from the American
misreporting and
media
intellectual
on why
dishonesty
President
from
Trump
the American media
decided
on
to
why
launch this
President
operation.
Trump
So
decided
let me
to
remind
launch
you,
this operation.
Operation Midnight
So let me
Hammer,
remind
which took
you,
place last June,
Operation Midnight
obliterated
Hammer, which took
Iran's
place last
three
June,
major nuclear
obliterated
sites.
Iran's
Yet the
three
terrorist
major
Iranian
nuclear
regime
sites.
has remained
Yet
fully
the terrorist
committed
Iranian
to rebuilding
regime has remained
its nuclear
fully
program.
committed to rebuilding
How do we know this?
its nuclear
because
program.
Iran has pursued
How do we
this
know
path
this?
of war and violence
Because Iran has
despite
pursued
President
this
Trump,
path of war and violence
dispatching two of his
despite
top
President
and
Trump,
most trusted
dispatching
negotiators
two of his top
to engage in
negotiators
in good
to
faith
engage in
negotiations to try and
in
reach
good
a
faith
deal.
negotiations
And the world
to try
knows
and
this
reach a
president's
deal.
preference is
And the world
always
knows
peace
this
and
president's
diplomacy
preference
first.
is always
Look no
peace
further
and
than the
diplomacy
8
first.
additional global
Look no further than
conflicts
the 8
he has
additional
ended
global
in the past year
conflicts
as proof.
he has ended in the past
Unfortunately,
year as
the
proof.
terrorist Iranian regime refused to
the
negotiate
terrorist
in good
Iranian
faith.
regime
They
refused
chose
to
this
negotiate
path
in good
of
faith.
violence and destruction.
They chose this
and they
path
are
of
reaping the
violence and
consequences
destruction
of their horrible
and they are
decision.
reaping the consequences.
The regime
of
did
their
what they
horrible
always
decision.
have done.
The
They
regime
lied.
did what
They
they
delayed.
always have done.
They tried to string
They
the
lied.
United
They
States
delayed.
of America
They tried to
along.
string the United
They wanted
States
to buy
of
themselves
America
time to
along.
continue building
They wanted to buy themselves time to continue building ballistic missiles and other U.S. personnel and troops in the region, and to continue aggressively pursuing their unacceptable nuclear ambitions. U.S. negotiators offered a lift to lift crippling sanctions on Iran, and even provide nuclear fuel to Iran at no cost to support a civil nuclear power program. To support a civil additionally had the opportunity to accept. They additionally had the opportunity to accept U.S. to develop as an investor in potential nuclear energy together under a nuclear energy together framework. Under a mutually agreed upon framework. Iran would have to forfeit their enrichment capacity. Iran would have to forfeit their enrichment capacity. But Iran rejected. They accepted none of these generous and unprecedented offers by the United States. Unprecedented offers by the United States. They refused to say yes to peace. They refused and their refusal made clear that their number one priority was building a nuclear weapon with which to threaten the United States of America. With which to threaten again the United States they have been chanting death to. The country they have been chanting death to. Let me state this again clearly. Iran rejected the path of peace because the terrorists in charge of this regime wanted to build nuclear weapons to use against Americans nuclear weapons and our allies. To use against Americans. President Trump and our made allies. The determination, a courageous determination, a courageous that the path the United States was on with Iran had only one outcome. The United States was on with Iran had only one outcome at the hands of a nuclear armed terroristic regime of a nuclear armed terrorist death and destruction and threats against the American death and destruction and threats against the Operation Epic Fury have ended. Operation Epic Fury has forged a new path that will better ensure the security of the United States and our security of the United States and our people. That President Trump would be like many of his predecessors. That President Trump would be like many of his predecessors. And he would refuse to enforce his clear red lines. And he would refuse to enforce that has proven to be a catastrophic error. That has proven to be a catastrophic error. When President Trump makes a threat, and I have reiterated that threat many times, and I have reiterated that threat many times from this President Trump does not bluff. President Trump, the President's words are backed up by the mightiest warriors. Words are backed up by the mightiest warriors in the world who possess the most sophisticated capabilities this 49 and counting of the most senior Iranian regime leaders, including the senior Iranian regime have already been wiped off the face of the earth. Have already been wiped off the face of the earth. Killing these brutalists, brutal terrorists is killing these for America. Brutal terrorists is world a much safer place. And makes the world. I want to also extend our prayers and condolences. I want to also extend our prayers and condolences to the families of who have been lost in Operation Epic Fury. Who have been lost. These heroes represent the very best among us. These heroes represent they laid down their lives in defense of our country. They laid down their lives in defense of our country, and we will never forget their legacy. As the President said, we grieve for these American patriots. As the President said, families as we continue the righteous mission. Families as we continue their righteous mission. President Trump intends to attend the dignified transfer of these American heroes to stand in transfer of these American heroes to stand in grief. I understand the Department of War is working on scheduling this transfer, and we will provide updates scheduling this transfer, and we will provide updates at the appropriate time. The Trump administration is also doing everything within our power to protect to protect the launch of Operation Epic Fury. More than since the launch of Operation Epic Fury, more than 17,500 from the Middle East. Safely returned with over 8,500 American citizens with over 8,500 American citizens returning home to the United States. If you are a U.S. citizen in the Middle East looking to return to the United States, the Secretary of State asked that you please register. The Secretary of State asked that you please register with the State Department. At STEP, the State Department will identify where you are, and the State Department will identify where you are and provide the administration is already rapidly charting flights free of charge, booking commercial options free of charge, and to become increasingly available, which we expect to become increasingly available as time goes on and the success of this mission. I know the President and Secretary of State Rubio have been in touch as well with our allies in the region directly about this problem, making it clear that it is a priority of the United States of America to bring every United States of America. The Trump administration will not rest until every American is home safely and until every American is home safely and until the terrorist threat destroyed from Iran. With that, I'll take your questions. Eric, why don't you kick us off today? With that, I'll take your questions. Eric, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you.
As you mentioned, Iran's regime, its leadership, as you mentioned, Iran's regime, its leadership. We have a sense right now who's actually calling. We have a sense right now who in Iran is actually calling the shots. The Supreme Leader's son, maybe named his successor. Do you have any more information? Maybe named his successor. Do you have any more information?
Sure. We've seen those reports as well, of course. Sure. This is something that our intelligence agencies are closely monitoring. The truth is, we'll have to wait and see. The President has said, we'll have to wait and see. The President has said repeatedly that the four military objectives that I laid out for you, the four military objectives that I laid out for you, Iran's navy, to destroy their ballistic missile capacity, to ensure their ballistic missile capacity, to ensure their proxies in the region ensure that they can never obtain a nuclear weapon. And to also ensure that they can never obtain a nuclear weapon. The President has said, of course, for Iran,
thing for the
president has set up freedom for the Iranian people, and ultimately we hope that freedom rests in their hands. And ultimately we hope that freedom rests in their hands.
Under fire as well. President Trump's vision for the region has been to bring the Arab and Muslim nations to the table together, bring the Arab and Muslim nations to be stable together. Abraham, if this regime topples Israel, if this regime and really a new Middle East come out of this from the dust settles, and really a new Middle East come out of this when the dust settles.
The greatest deterrent to true and long-lasting deterrent in the Middle East has always been long-lasting peace in the Middle East has always been in our Arab and Gulf partners, in our Arab and Arab and Gulf partners, of course, and the nation and ally Israel, as well as of course we have seen all of the Arab partners in the region. We have seen all of the Arab partners in the region come together with President Trump. Many of them commending him with President Trump. Many of them commending him for the American troops in our bases in the region that are housed. American troops in many of these Arab region that are housed. And I know that many of these regional partners are contributing. And I know that many of these regional partners are contributing. Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and the president continues to be engaged with all of them.
Axios, I think, was the first to report this morning. Axios, I think, was the first to report this morning. This phone call between the president and had given the U.S. this information about where the Ayatollah had given the U.S. this information about where the Ayatollah would be. How important was that information in the president making the decision to strike where when the president making the decision to strike where and when he did?
With respect to the timeline. I think it was important with respect prior to that phone call. But I think the president prior to that phone call, the Iranian regime had a good feeling that the Iranian regime was going to strike the United States. And the president was faced with a choice. And the president was faced with a choice. Does the United States of America use our military and our capabilities to strike our military and our capabilities to strike that has been threatening our country and our people for 47 years, or is he going to, as commander in chief, or is he going to, as commander in chief, sit back and watch as the rogue Iranian regime? That's obviously an unacceptable. That's obviously an unacceptable choice. There is unacceptable to the president, which is why he made this decision. Unacceptable to the president, which is why he made this decision. Was going to be as for that where the Ayatollah was going to be on the timeline of the operation, had an impact on the timeline of the operation, but not quite the
president's decision. The way the public is viewing this, we were sitting here last week. The public is viewing this. We were sitting here last week. I felt like he had to sell the possibility that he felt like he had to sell the possibility that 5 days on hasn't been kind of traditional. 5 days on hasn't been kind of the traditional. Does the president believe the country supports the actions that he's taken so far in Iran? Supports the actions that he's taken so far in Iran?
Knows the country is smart enough to read past many of the fake news headlines. Smart enough to read past many of the people in this room that this action was unjustifiable. Again, that this action was unjustifiable. Again, this is a rogue terrorist regime. Our allies and our people, United States, our allies and our people, and the American people are smart enough to know that. And they've also been smart enough to listen to the president himself. And they've also been smart enough to listen to the president in his second term, not just over the past year in his first term as president, and also for the past 40 years of his life. And also this is a president who has been remarkably consistent on this issue. That Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. That Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. And the president tried extensively. He and his team gave it their best go. He and his team gave it their best go. And the president ultimately came to the determination path. The Iranian regime was not a pursuable path. The Iranian regime, they want death. Americans, destruction. They want to kill Americans, and that's unacceptable to him as commander. President, it's intolerable to him as commander in chief.
I was seeing the update from the State Department on the 17,500 Americans who've already come back, including some 8,000 Americans yesterday. There are still 6,000 that are looking to get out, as I understand it. 6,000 that are looking to get out, as I understand it. You just told Garrett about the president's decision on a timeline. You just told Garrett about the president's decision on a timeline. Before receiving the specific intelligence about the meeting on Saturday. The specific intelligence about the meeting on Saturday. More done. Should there have been in advance of the strikes to try to get those Americans in the region? To try to get those Americans in the region before resources and information to get home before day 3 of the war.
There was many, and I wish that everyone in this room would report on them. And I wish that everyone in this room would report on them. Level 4 travel advisories. Secretary of State dating back to January for many of the dating back countries in the region. For many January 14th countries in the region. The U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia advised personnel. The U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia advised personnel increase caution and limit non-essential travel. Increase caution and limit non-essential travel. On February 11th, the U.S. Department of State Consular Affairs shared a list of countries with level 4 do not travel advisories. Level 4 do not travel advisories. Do not travel much more clear than that. Do not travel. On February 23rd, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon on February 23rd, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon family members to leave Lebanon and family members to leave Lebanon due to safety risks. On March 2nd, the State Department urged U.S. citizens on March 2nd Second, the State Department immediately citizens to depart Lebanon. With respect to Iran on February 27th, with respect to Iran on February 27th, the Secretary designated Iran as a state of sponsor no American should travel to Iran for any no American should travel to Iran on February 27th. The U.S. ambassador to Israel warned Americans to leave Iran, and they provided travel advisors through the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. The State Department was all hands on deck on advising extreme caution and do not travel advising to Americans in the region. With respect to the Americans who are still in the region now, with respect to the Americans who are still in the region now, that they register at the website so they can directly identify you, and we are actively identify you, working to charter flights. There is some commercial flights that are taking off intermittently from these countries, and we plan to get Americans from these countries, and we plan to get Americans on board as quickly as possible. And we have some additional measures that I think will be announced and we have some additional measures that I can also reiterate from the coming days. Again, I can also reiterate from the President's directly with our allies and partners in the region, directly with our allies and partners in getting Americans home, and we will do that, and we will not rest until every single American is returned home. We will not rest until every single American is returned home.
Just on how people might be experiencing this at home. Just on how people might be experiencing this at home. The economy and the economy, cost of oil spiking. And is there a need to start those Navy escorts administrative hormones now to sort of blunt the impact of people, and also now to sort of blunt the impact of people, and also because Spain is a member of the EU, put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo. Put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo.
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the President's message yesterday. I think they heard the President's message yesterday. It's my understanding over the past several hours, and it's my understanding over the past several hours with the U.S. military, and so I know that with the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain. The President expects all of our European allies, the President expects all of our European allies, in this long sought-after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also with respect to oil prices and the economy here at home. With respect to oil prices and the economy here at home, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Wright, the National Economic Council of Energy, that is led by Governor Berg, Council of Energy, that is led by Governor Berg, has been long working on and well in advance. Yesterday, President Trump announced the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will provide political risk insurance at a very reasonable price for crude carriers and cargo ships operating in and around the Gulf. And as you pointed out, Jackie, the President said, if necessary, the President said, if the U.S. Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait to why this action was so necessary, that ultimately the energy industry is going to benefit. Ultimately, the energy industry is going to benefit from the President's actions Iran will no longer be controlling, because Iran will no longer be controlling the free flow of energy, which, as you all know, controls 20% of energy, which, as you all know, controls 20% of the world's global oil supply.
The President said yesterday there wasn't time to make evacuation plans. Given how critical the President has been, given how critical the President has been evacuation from Afghanistan from 5 years ago, why wasn't there more of a focus? Why wasn't there more evacuation plans on the Middle East? Evacuation plans from the Middle East ready to go. At least put in place ready to go. I just laid out for you that there have been plans. Again, I just laid out the State Department has been very clear. The American people has been very clear to the American not to travel to these regions. We gave not to travel notices to leave immediately the countries where these Americans were within. And unlike the previous administration, we actually have a number. We actually have identified the number of people in the region identified the number of people. We are in direct contact and engagement with them. We are in direct contact and engagement with them. A few thousand people who have requested assistance to come home in comparison to the millions who we understand are in the region. The millions who we understand are in the region. So we will help every single American who wants to come home if they're making that request of the State Department.
As recently as last night, we're being told we can't help you. We're being told we can't help you. The line was updated, and I expect every single person was updated, and I expect every single person in so that information can be relayed appropriately so that information can be relayed appropriately to your audiences. You all have a responsibility to let them know that the line has been updated to let them know that the line has been updated accordingly with the proper guidance. Very quick to do selfie videos with the line yesterday. Very quick to do selfie videos with the line yesterday. Not so quick to report on the corrected message today. Quickly worked so that is something and we have fixed that problem. However, we're also pointing to people to the website. However, we're also pointing to people to the website exactly where you are, so that when there are commercial flights where you are moving into that area, when there are chartered flights moving into that area, we can get Americans chartered flights moving into that area. We can get Americans on planes as quickly as possible.
Flights have been able to get out of the region so far. Flights have been able to get out of the region.
I don't have an exact count for you, but I know that we're working. I don't have an exact count for you, but I know that we're working on chartering yesterday. We're doing it again today. We were doing it yesterday. We're doing it again today. And I don't. You should not expect us to taking off detail exactly when these flights are taking off for obvious reasons. They are not going to hesitate to target. They are not going to hesitate, which is to target completely intolerable for safety and security reasons. Completely intolerable, but for safety and security reasons, we're not going to be broadcasting when flights full of Americans are going to be taking off. Obviously.
At the top there, you said that the Iranian regime is being explicitly say then whether or not regime change is a goal, whether or not regime change is a goal.
The goals of this operation have been made very clear. The goals of this operation have been made very clear in his speech. And the president has said them in his speech and released that video in the middle of the night to all of you and released that video in the middle of the night to all of you and to the world. The stated military objectives of eliminate Iran's ballistic missile threat, eliminate Iran's ballistic missile threat, disrupt their naval capability, disrupt sever their pathway and end their pathway to nuclear weapons. And I can report, as you all saw from the Pentagon today, and I can report, as you all saw from the Pentagon today, that thus far this operation has been remarkably successful. In total control of Iranian airspace, in total control of Iranian 24/7 operations. We have continuous 24/7 We've had more than 2,000 targets that we've had more than 2,000 munitions have been employed. The first 24 hours of this campaign were described nearly as twice the scale of the 2003 shock and awe campaign. And we've seen that the enemy, the Iranian, the enemy, the Iranian retaliatory strikes against the United States and their threat reduction has the United States reduced significantly. If you look at the Iranian ballistic missile launches, they're down 86% from day one. They're down 86%. So while the United States military continues to increase its complete dominance over this rogue regime, they are weakening day by day. They are weakening day by day. Again, Operation Epic Fury. Operation Epic Fury goals and objectives detailed very quickly, but obviously, as the president has said numerous times, do we want to see Iran being led by a rogue terrorist regime? Iran being led by a rogue terrorist regime? No, of course not. Is taking out a terrorist is a good day for our country. Taking out a terrorist is a good day for our country and a good day for our people.
That point that you just make about the United States. And that point that you just make about the government overthrown. Mind seeing Trump has talked about wanting to see Iranian President Trump has talked about the government. Has the president considered at all how has the president a U.S. considered at all kind of how he views a U.S. role?
I think it's something the president is actively considering. I think it's something the president is actively considering in his national security team. But again, right now, in his national security team, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, minute by minute, is on ensuring day by day, an effective success of Operation Epic Fury. An effective success of Operation Epic Fury.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions.
Go ahead. I want to ask you about. I wasn't looking at you. You can ask a question and then I'll go through it. You can ask a question and then I'll go through it.
President Trump told U.S. munitions on Monday that President Trump still has a good supply of weapons. That the U.S. still has a good supply of weapons.
We're not where we need to be.
What does he mean by that? And does President Trump then want to ask on Congress? President Trump then want to ask on Congress funding for pass a supplemental to increase funding for missile interceptor systems, like the ones being used at U.S. bases in the Middle East.
I don't have any updates for you on congressional asks. I don't have any updates. You know, under this president, we have from the president. As you know, under this president, we have significantly increased our defense budget for our national security and for the United States for our national security. With respect to munitions, ammunition, weapons stockpiles, the United States, ammunition, weapons has more than enough capability to not only successfully execute Operation Epic Fury, but to go much further. We have weapons stockpiles in places that many people in this world don't even know about. However, the president in that post was pointing out that. However, the president in that post was pointing out that an incompetent leader in this White House for 4 years who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, for free, by the name of Ukraine. So the president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision. The president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision. But nevertheless, the American military, and I will also add the American military, and I will also add President Trump has rightfully been calling on to rapidly and aggressively produce American weapons because they are the best in the world, and the president always likes to get things done as quickly as possible, and so he's get things done as quickly as possible, and so try to speed up our defense industry in his efforts to try to speed up our defense industry to protect our homeland. Go ahead.
Caroline,
Go ahead.
Caroline, thinking about round trips, about the president's could be used round were to be sent into could be used if they were to be sent into Iran.
Well, they're not part of the plan for this operation. Well, they're not part of the but I certainly will never take away military options. But I certainly will never take away military options on behalf of the president of the United States. Wisely does not do the same for himself. I know there's many leaders in the past who like to take options. There's many leaders in the past who like to take understanding of the table without having a full understanding of how things could develop. So again, it's not part of the current plan, but I'm not going to remove an option on the table for the president that is on the table.
Did the United States airstrike a girls' elementary
Not that we know of, Sean, and the Department of War is investigating this matter, and I would just tell you very strongly the United States of America does not target the United States, unlike the rogue Iranian regime that targets civilians, that kills children, that targets civilians, thousands of their own people, that has killed thousands of their own people. Propaganda quite effectively, and unfortunately, propaganda quite effectively, and unfortunately, many people in this room have fallen for that propaganda. From pointing the finger at the United States of America, from pointing the finger targeting civilians of America, that's not something that targeting civilians because that's not something that these armed forces do. Reagan.
The news cycle. Is the SAVE Act still a priority for the administration? A priority for the administration? The administration's talks provide an update on the administration's talks with
SAVE Act is absolutely still a priority for this president. SAVE Act is absolutely still a priority for this president. The focus, of course, of much of the president's time right now is on ensuring the success of Operation Fury, but the president can walk and chew gum at the same time. The president can walk and chew gum at the same time. And the issues that matter here at home for the American people, the issues that matter here at home for the American people, including the cost of living, which is why you'll see the president in about an hour and a half, which is why you'll see the president in about an hour and a half at the rate he will be sitting with big tech companies, with AI companies, with big tech companies, building in communities across the country, and building in communities across the country, of the electricity tab to pick up the cost of the electricity tab in these small towns and communities American consumers. So you'll be hearing from the president directly on this very important domestic agenda item on this very important domestic agenda item he mentioned this afternoon in an address. So that he mentioned, check it off the list as another promise made and kept by this president. Check it off the list as another promise made and kept by this president.
Caroline, I just wanted to get back to Danny's question. So those four objectives So those four objectives do not explicitly include if those objectives were achieved, those objectives were achieved, and the Islamic Republic still, would that be an acceptable outcome?
That's a hypothetical question that I'm not going to engage in. Right now, the president that I'm not going to engage in again. Right now, the president executing the success of Operation executing which we are already doing so in a very tremendous. We are already doing so in a very tremendous and impressionable way. Stephen,
the Trump administration was reportedly considering arming Kurdish the Kurdish forces uprising in Iran. Can you comment on that report of uprising in Iran?
I can comment on the fact that the president has held many calls with partners, allies, and leaders in the region, allies and leaders in the region, Kurdish in the Middle East, with respect to our Kurdish leaders with respect to our base that we have for any report suggesting that the president has agreed to any such plan has agreed to false. Any such plan is completely false and should not be
Trump
written.
was saying yesterday that President Trump was saying within taking over in Iran, someone from within spoke about how Venezuela he saw as a successful model, how Venezuela he saw as a successful model and had a better relationship. Iran's president Iran's president in 24 office, a relative reformer. He's part of the three-man council now. He's part of the three-man council now. Does President Trump see him as a
again? That's another hypothetical, and I haven't spoken to the president about this specific individual, and I haven't spoken to the president about this specific individual, so I don't want to get ahead of him on any assessments that should be made.
Yesterday, the president acknowledged that as for gas prices here in the U.S., what is the as for gas prices doing right now to counter that? I mean, should they doing right now to counter that? I mean, should they skyrocket right now with higher gas prices? And then a second question on the rash that was on the president's neck, the skin cream that he was using, but why is the president using this cream? Why is the president using this cream?
To your second question, I don't have anything additional to add to the physician statement that we provided to all of you on those questions. statement that I know the statement said that the redness on the neck will dissipate. Said that the redness on the neck will dissipate. To your first question about oil prices. To your first question, we have a president who has exuded American energy dominance who has exuded American energy dominance that is wholeheartedly focused on administration that is wholeheartedly focused as best as we can. Prices stable. This operation is temporary to protect the homeland. But crude oil prices did fall yesterday. They remain stable today. Did fall yesterday. They remain stable to ensure the stability in global energy markets. To ensure the stability in global energy markets. Offering reasonably priced political risk insurance. Offering and the potential for the U.S. Navy to provide protection. For the flow of energy to provide protection for the flow of energy through the state. It is the president's belief and his economic team's belief. The president's belief that the economy continues to be very strong. It's robust and will be able to weather any of the temporary impacts. To weather any of the temporary impacts of Operation Epic Fury. John.
Just to follow up to that, the timeline for making the strait, for oil tankers to transport oil through the strait, what is that timeline, and what can the president do? What is that timeline, and what can the president do?
I don't want to commit to a timeline, but certainly I don't want to commit to a timeline, but certainly by both something that is being calculated and the Department of Energy. They're working very closely, and the Department of Energy are working very closely. The briefings on the subject with the president, and this is again on the subject. They're monitoring, and if and when necessary, they're monitoring. The United States Navy will provide assistance to escort the United States Navy will provide assistance to escort oil tankers through the strait. In the blue. Sure, in the blue. You're not in blue, Andrew. Go ahead. Yeah, you're not in blue, Andrew. Well, I guess you are, sort of. I'll go to you after. Well, I guess you are, sort of. I'll go to you after.
You had mentioned about the commercial aircraft. What about the use of military aircraft? Would that happen? What about the use of military aircraft?
Correct.
Or junction with?
That is something that is definitely underway. That is something that is definitely we're going to use that underway. We want as many planes. We're going to use that chartered, commercial, or many planes, whether they're chartered, commercial, or military, and returning them safely. Taking Americans out of the Middle East. Andrew, go ahead. Safely home. So yes, you're welcome. Andrew, go ahead. You're welcome.
A long list of grievances against the Iranian government going back to the against the Iranians going back to the takeover of the barracks bomb 9, barracks bomb 8, no one from the administration has laid out that was supposed to be taken care of by this was supposed to be taken care of by the rationales offered by Secretary Rubio, the president was security advisor, retaliation against Americans. Retaliation against Iran after Israeli strikes. The president says Israeli strikes. It was his own. The president says Iran was going to attack. Iran was going to attack across the administration. Why is it that across the administration you can't say threat against the United States was threat against the United States was, and also Prime Minister Starmer told Parliament today. Prime Minister Starmer told Parliament today allow his reason that he did was to allow. He was not satisfied that there was a lawful basis. He was not satisfied that there was a lawful basis and a viable. Was there an attempt to provide? Was there an attempt to provide a legal basis government for these strikes and a viable for these strikes and a viable through plan?
I completely reject the first question. I completely reject the President of the United States, the Secretary of War, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of Vice President. Now I am out here today to explain to you exactly what led the President to make the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury. And President Trump does not make these decisions in a vacuum. And President Trump does not make these decisions in a vacuum. This decision to launch this operation was based on direct threats that Iran posed to the United States of America, and the President's feeling based on fact, and the President's feeling based on an imminent and direct threat to the United States of America, based on the fact that they are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, that they are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, that they were rapidly and aggressively building up their ballistic missile program, to give themselves immunity within their country, to give themselves immunity within their country, alongside their navy, so that inside their country, nuclear weapons and nuclear bombs, which would nuclear weapons pose a risk to Americans in the region, and even Americans one day here in the region, and even other point on one day here at home. The President found, and then another point on this, extensive, the President found failed negotiations with Iran, that they were hell-bent on death and destruction, that they were hell-bent on death and destruction. Just another president on a very long list to stop back and stood by very long list who sat back of this direct threat and passed the next administration. The president had a feeling again based on fact. The president had a feeling again based on fact that Iran was going to strike the United States, and he made a determination to launch Operation, and he made a determination to launch Operation. I would like the media to actually report, and I would like the media rather than just picking sound bites from one person in this administration and saying, oh, they're contradicting the other person, and saying, oh, they're contradicting the other person, no. Again, they are made by the president's feeling that Iran was going to strike the United States, that Iran was going to strike the United States, and he was not going to sit back and watch that happen. The determination was made that the president was going to strike first alongside Israel, and that was going to strike first alongside Israel. The right has obviously been proven to be the right decision. Libby, an effective one at that. Libby, go ahead.
First has the president switching with the family members. First has the president switching with the family members. Second, given what you outlined Brooks entirely. Second, given what you outlined Brooks and sunk a bunch of Navy ships. We hit all of these sunk a bunch of Navy ships. What can Americans expect the target to be? What can Americans expect the goal to be? All of this. What is victory? Given we keep all of this. What is victory? Given we even taking out the runs.
Victory will be determined by the commander-in-chief. Victory will be determined by the commander-in-chief once the goals and the objectives that we have repeatedly laid out. We just in the next few hours will be achieving just that dominance over the skies, which means the United States dominance over the skies will be raining United States military weapons down, will be raining Iran to hit these specific targets that have been identified as crucial to take out. Been identified as crucial to take out by the Department. Sure, John. John.
Has the U.S. posture changed regarding the nuclear North Korea and the fact that the stated goal is to make sure that Iran is not a nuclear? The stated goal is to make sure that Iran is not a nuclear country.
I don't have any change in position.
Quick follow-up. There's been reports that Ali Khamenei's son the administration think that he is a part of the same regime. The administration think that he is a part of the same regime. People in the country to uprise. Would they like or rise up people in the country to uprise?
There's reports he's been elected, or that he's assuming. There's reports he's been elected, or that he's assuming to be elected. He's one of the likely options, or that he has been elected. That he's one of the likely options, or that he has been elected. Until someone actually. We'll wait to confirm until someone actually.
The dignified transfer is willing to attend.
Given what Secretary Higgs said this morning, given what Secretary Higgs said this morning,
press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members.
No, it's the position of this administration that the press and position of this administration that the press should accurately report on the success of Operation Evacuation and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that is doing the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice in this room, they would kill every single person in this room, and so they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room, their own lives for the rest of us in this room, and for every American that is based in the Middle East, and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these.
About these six, it was front page news.
That's not what the secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the secretary meant. And you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not. You know you've never had a secretary of defense. There is not. Who cares? You've never had a secretary of defense. Who cares more?
There were tragic things happen. It's front page news. Yes, you know we cover the deaths of U.S. service members. Yes, you know we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only. That's a fact. Especially you. No, that's a fact. Especially you. Listen to me. Especially you, and especially CNN, and the Secretary of Defense and our men and women in uniform. About our travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. And your network you also had the chairman of the Joint Peace. You also had the chairman of the Joint Peace, who's a brave patriot, standing alongside the Secretary at the Pentagon this morning, again expressing his condolences this morning, again expressing his condolences to the United States. And I just told you that the President of the United States will be attending their dignified transfer. So please, we expect you to cover that as you should. We expect you to cover that as you should. But you and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make this administration look bad. And tries to use it to make an objectable fact. That is an objectable fact. If you're trying to argue right now, if you're trying to argue right now that CNN or President Donald Trump coverage, I think the American people would tend to Donald Trump and your ratings would tend to disagree with that as well. Go ahead. Sure.
On this, I understand that target civilian. I understand that the U.S. does not target civilians. Can you say that there's any evidence right now? Can you say that there's any evidence right now that it's not Israel in that? And then is there any assessment about Israel in that? Is there any assessment about Israel's role in that, if at all?
Again, the Department of War is currently investigating this matter. Again, I will reaffirm that the Department of War and the United States Armed Forces do not target civilians, and the United States does the Iranian regime who kill and execute their own regime, who kill and execute their own people.
On two separate issues, Caroline. First, what can you tell us about the military operation in Escalon? The military operation in Escalon. Is the president considering, and then secondly, is the president considering to boost munition stockpiles while we are munition stockpiles?
It's not something I've heard the president consider, but as you know, the president has been in direct correspondence with defense contractors, asking them to aggressively speed up their manufacturing of American-made weapons, which again are the best in the world. With respect to Ecuador, I would point you back to the statement released by the U.S. Southern Command on March 3rd, Ecuadorian U.S. military forces launched operations against designated terrorist organizations. These operations are a powerful example of the commitment of partners in Latin America, in the Caribbean to combat Latin America, in the Caribbean to combat together. We are taking decisive action to confront narco-terrorists who have long inflicted terror, violence, and corruption on citizens throughout the hemisphere. And within that, I would also add that this weekend, the heads of state from 12 nations across our Western Hemisphere in Miami, Florida across our Western Hemisphere in Miami, Florida on Saturday. Latin America Summit is to promote freedom, security, and prosperity in our region. The following countries will be in attendance: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Honduras, Ecuador, El Salvador, Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe some others Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe some others as well. The leaders of this country who have really formed a historic coalition who have really together to address criminal narco-terrorist together to address cartels, encounter illegal and mass migration, encounter not only the United States but the Western Hemisphere, not only the United States but the Western Hemisphere of this president. Thank you very much, everyone, and you'll see the president yourselves. Thank you very much, everyone, and you'll see the president yourselves in an hour.